Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Damuna Tira Vanasari Jamuna Tira Vanasari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanasari Jamuna Tira Vanasari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Gaura Kimanandi. Jaya Visupada Paramahamsa. Parivrajagacharya Stotra Satta Sri Simar, His Divine Grace, Charabai Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Skan Bibiti, Founder Charya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jaini Thai Gaura Pimanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksuranmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Jita Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Scha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kansana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vansakalpa Trubhyascha Vipa Sindhu Vyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Narayanam namaskritya Ram chaiva narotamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayasha badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamritam Utamashloka Charitam Shakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasaya Namaha. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, as Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Mukham karoti vasalam pangum langayate girim yatkripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam yatkripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our morning Bhagavatam class. And today happens to be a special day. Today is Saptami, Gaurapaksha, Madhava Masa, 535 Gaurabda. Very soon this will change to 536 with the advent of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu coming up. And today is the auspicious appearance of Sri Advaita Acharya. Jai Sri Advaita Acharya Ki. And although we have a long purport this morning, we will read a few things from the Chaitanya Charitamrita And today being the appearance of Srila Advaita Acharya, it is fasting till noontime. Text 35 from the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, second chapter, entitled The Lord in the Heart. Bhagavan Sarva Bhuteshu Lakshitah Swatmana Harihi Drishyair Buddhi Adibhir Drasta Lakshanair Anumapakai Bhagavan Sarvabhuteshu Lakshita Swatmana Harihi Drishyar Bhudyadibir Drasta Drishyar Bhudyadibir Drasta Lakshanair Anumapakai Bhagavan Sarvabhuteshu Lakshita Swatmana Harihi Drishyar Buddhyadibir Drasta. When there is, like here, buddhi is Y, vowel, followed by another vowel, A, then it becomes buddhya. We say buddhya. Drishyar buddhya dibir drasta. Buddhya. Yeah. Lakshanair asumat anumat pakai. Lakshanair anuma pakai. Bhagavan sarvabhuteshu Lakshita Swatmana Harihi Drishyar Buddhya Dibir Drasta Lakshanair Anumapakai. Bolo. Bhagavan Sarvabhuteshu Lakshita Swatmana Harihi Drishyar Bhudyadibhir Drasta Lakshanair Anumapakai Bhagavan Sarvabhuteshu Lakshita Swatmana Harihi Drishyar Bhudyadibir Drasta Lakshanair Anumapakai. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Sarva, all, Bhuteshu, in the living entities, Lakshitaha, is visible, Swaatmana, along with the self, Harihi, the Lord, Drishyai, by what is seen, Buddhi Adibihi, by intelligence, Drasta, one who sees, Lakshanai, by different signs, Anumapakai, by hypothesis. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is in every living being, along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. Kindly repeat after me. The personality of Godhead.
The personality of Godhead.
Lord Sri Krishna is in every living being, along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. Purport. The general argument of the common man is that since the Lord is not visible to our eyes, how can one either surrender unto Him or render transcendental loving service unto Him? To such a common man, here is a practical suggestion given by Srila Shukadeva Goswami as to how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present material senses. But when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy, and such a pure devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. He can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize, even for the common man. The procedure is as follows. Let us listen to the procedure. One can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. He may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. He can feel that the hand, the leg, the head, the hair, and the limbs are all his bodily parts and parcels. But as such, the hand, the leg, the head, etc., cannot be identified with his self. Therefore, just by using intelligence, he can distinguish and separate his self from other things that he sees. So the natural conclusion is that the living being, either man or beast, is the seer, and he sees besides himself all other things. So there is a difference between the seer and the seen. Now, by a little use of intelligence, we can also readily agree that the living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or to move independently. All our ordinary actions and perceptions depend on various forms of energy supplied to us by nature in various combinations. Our senses of perception and of action, that is to say, our 5 perceptive senses of 1. Hearing, 2. Touch, 3. Sight, 4. Taste, and 5. Smell, as well as our 5 senses of action, namely 1. Hands, 2. Legs, 3. Speech, 4. Evacuation organs, and 5. Reproductive organs, and also our 3 subtle senses, namely 1. Mind, 2. Intelligence, and 3. Ego. 13 senses in all, are supplied to us by various arrangements of gross or subtle forms of natural energy. And it is equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy. As this conclusively proves that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion, and as we undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy, we conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses as well as the objects of perception are material. Everyone following this? The spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence. That is the difference between spirit and matter. There are some less intelligent arguments that matter develops the power of seeing and moving as a certain organic development. But such an argument cannot be accepted because there is no experimental evidence that matter has anywhere produced a living entity. Therefore, that book, Life Comes from Matter. Life comes from matter. I see, life doesn't come from matter. Matter comes from life, right? Life actually comes from life. And matter also comes from life. So this point is being made here. This is the common argument that people give, that from this body comes another body. But this body is a living body. If the body is dead, you won't have any living entity coming out of that body. So Prabhupada is mentioning here, such an argument cannot be accepted because there is no experimental evidence that matter has anywhere produced a living entity. Some years back, when Prabhupada was physically present, one of our sannyasis at the time, Hansaduta Swami, who was not a big scholar, didn't have a postgraduate degree, but he was preaching in Sri Lanka, and there was a big debate between him and one big professor about, life comes from matter. That is their argument. Our argument is life comes from life. So the big debate, public debate, and he defeated that scholar. Prabhupada was very happy. He was very, very pleased. So because the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is the highest philosophy. If we understand it nicely, properly, we can defeat any philosophy, any argument. And Prabhupada continues here, trust no future, however pleasant. Idle talks regarding future development of matter into spirit, because some people will say, okay, now we cannot, but in the future we will create life. They say like that. Post-dated check. So Prabhupada is telling, this is an expression, and trust no future, however pleasant. So idle talks regarding future development of matter into spirit are actually foolish, because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. Therefore, it is definite that matter and spirit are two different identities. That is the beginning of knowledge, which is nicely explained in the second verse of chapter 7, practically, which is Jnanam teham savijnanam idam bhakshamya sheshataha yajgatva neha bhuyo nyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. Krishna is speaking here to Arjuna. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and noumenal, by knowing which there shall remain nothing further to be known. So this phenomenal knowledge is referring to the word of phenomena or material world. Noumenal is spiritual world. So matter and spirit. So to continue here, therefore it is definite that matter and spirit are two different identities, and this conclusion is arrived at by the use of intelligence. Now we come to the point that the things which are seen by a little use of intelligence cannot be animate unless we accept someone as the user of or director of the intelligence. Intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority, and the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. When one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man. Deranged means crazy. And so a living being is dependent on intelligence or the direction of a superior being. Such intelligence is all-pervading. Every living being has his intelligence, and this intelligence, being the direction of some higher authority, is just like a father giving direction to his son. The higher authority, who is present and residing within every individual living being, is the super soul. So Prabhupada is going through a whole investigation here, halfway through the purport. At this point in our investigation, we may consider the following question. On the one hand, the following question. On the one hand, we realize that all our perceptions and activities are conditioned by arrangement by material nature. Yet we also ordinarily feel and say, I am perceiving, or I am doing. Therefore, we can say that our material senses of perception and action are moving because we are identifying the self with the material body, and that the superior principle of super self is guiding and supplying us according to our desire. By taking advantage of the guidance of super self in the form of intelligence, we can either continue to study and to put into practice our conclusion that I am not this body. Or we can choose to remain in the false material identification, fancying ourselves to be the possessors and doers. Our freedom consists in orienting our desire either toward the ignorant, material conception or true spiritual conception. We can easily attain to the true spiritual conception by recognizing the super self, Paramatma, to be our friend and guide, and by dovetailing our intelligence with the superior intelligence of Paramatma. Intelligence, it is also described, is the symptom of the soul. Symptom of the soul. The super self and the individual self are both spirit, and therefore the super self and the individual self are both qualitatively one and distinct from matter. So both Atma and Paramatma, both the Jiva and the super soul, are distinct from matter. But the super self and the individual self cannot be on an equal level, because the super self gives direction and supplies intelligence, and the individual self follows the direction, and thus actions are performed properly. The individual is completely dependent on the direction of the super self, because in every step the individual self follows the direction of the super self in the matter of seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling, willing, etc. And the conclusion of this purport, in the last paragraph here, so far as common sense is concerned, we come to the conclusion that there are three identities. What are the three identities?
What is material, soul and super soul?
Very good. You're reading the purport. Yes, three identities, namely matter, 2, spirit, and 3, super spirit or super soul. Prabhupada said here, super spirit. Now if we go to the Bhagavad Gita or the Vedic intelligence, Bhagavad Gita means Vedic intelligence, we can further understand that all three identities, namely matter, individual spirit, and the super spirit, are all dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are 3 of the 5 tattvas presented in the Bhagavad Gita. Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti. 3 separate identities. Then of course Kala and Karma. The super self is a partial representation or plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhagavad Gita affirms that the Supreme Personality of Godhead dominates all over the material world by his partial representation only. God is great, and he cannot be simply an order supplier of the individual selves. Therefore, the super soul cannot be a full representation of the Supreme Self, Purushottama, the absolute personality of Godhead. Realization of the super self by the individual self is the beginning of self-realization. And by the progress of such self-realization, one is able to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by intelligence, by the help of authorized scriptures, and principally by the grace of the Lord. So the same point Prabhupada was making in the beginning, that by having, everything begins with faith, Shraddha, although Shraddha, then Krishna, this factor, Krishna gives the proper intelligence to by which we can understand. So this is being underlined here. To understand the difference between the super soul and the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, by intelligence, by the help of Shastra, and principally by the grace of the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary conception of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And Srimad Bhagavatam is a further explanation of the science of Godhead. So if we stick to our determination and pray for the mercy of the director of intelligence sitting within the same bodily tree, like a bird sitting with another bird, as explained in the Upanishads, certainly the purport of the revealed information in the Vedas become clear to our vision. And there is no difficulty in realizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. The intelligent man, therefore, after many births of such use of intelligence, surrenders himself at the lotus feet of Vasudeva, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanabrahmam prapajate Vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudolabha. We'll take a few minutes to read about Srila Advaita Acharya. Very elaborate description given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adilila, chapter 6, entitled The Glories of Sri Advaita Acharya. We'll just read a few. So as we normally do. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Sri Advaita Acharya Ki. So a short introduction here of chapter 6. The truth of Advaita Acharya has been described in 2 verses. It is said that material nature has 2 features, namely the material cause and the efficient cause. The efficient causal activities are caused by Mahavishnu, and the material causal activities are caused by another form of Mahavishnu known as Advaita. That Advaita, the superintendent of the cosmic manifestation, has descended in the form of Advaita Acharya to associate with Lord Chaitanya. When he is addressed as the servitor of Lord Chaitanya, his glories are magnified, because unless one is invigorated by this mentality of servitorship, unless one is invigorated by this mentality of servitorship, one cannot understand the mellows derived from devotional service to the Supreme Lord Krishna. Text number 1. Bandeham Srimad Advaita Charyam Adbhuta Chestitam Yasya Prasadad Agnopi Tat Swarupam Nirupayat. Translation: I offer my respectful obeisances to Sri Advaita Acharya, whose activities are all wonderful. By his mercy, even a foolish person can describe his characteristics. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Text number 2. All glories to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Lord Nityananda. All glories to Advaita Acharya. And all glories to all the devotees of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Text number 3. Panchashloke kahila Sri Nityananda Tattva Sloka dvaye kahi Advaita charyera mahatva. Translation: in 5 verses I have described the principle of Lord Nityananda. Then in the following 2 verses I describe the glories of Sri Advaita Acharya. Mahavishnu Jagatkarta Mayaya Srijatyadam Tasyavatara Evayam Advaita Charya Isvaraha. Translation to text 4. Lord Advaita Acharya is the incarnation of Mahavishnu, whose main function is to create the cosmic world through the actions of Maya. Text 5. Advaitam Harina Dvaitad Acharyam Bhakti Shamsanat Bhaktavataram Isamtam Advaita Acharyam Ashraye. Because he is non-different from Hari, the Supreme Lord, he is called Advaita. And because he propagates the cult of devotion, he is called Acharya. He is the Lord and the incarnation of the Lord's devotee. Therefore, I take shelter of him. Text 6. Advaita Acharya Gosani Sakshat Ishvara Yanhara Mahima Nahe Jivera Gochara. Translation: Sri Advaita Acharya is indeed directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. His glory is beyond the conception of ordinary living beings. Text 7. Mahavishnu Sristi Karena Dagat Adikarya Tandra Avatara Sakshat Advaita Acharya. Mahavishnu performs all the functions of the creation of the universes. Sri Advaita Acharya is his direct incarnation. Just a few verses coming. There's one purport. We'll read the purport. That will be a little introduction to Advaita Acharya here. So text 8. Ye Purusha Sristi Stiti Karena Mayaya Ananta Brahmanda Sristi Karena Lilaya. Translation: that Purusha creates and maintains with his external energy. He creates innumerable universes in his pastimes. Text 9. Ischaya Anantamurti Karena Prakasha Ekka Ekka Murti Karena Brahmande Prabesha. Translation: by his will, he manifests himself in unlimited forms in which he enters each and every universe. Text 10. Se purushera amsha advaita nahi kichubeda sarira visheshatandra nahika vicheda. Translation: Sri Advaita Acharya is a plenary portion of that Purusha, and so is not different from him. Indeed, Sri Advaita Acharya is not separate, but is another form of that Purusha. And text 11, Sahaya Karena Tandra Laiya Pradhana Koti Brahmanda Karena Ischaya Nirmana. He, Advaita Acharya, helps in the pastimes of the Purusha with whose material energy and by whose will he creates innumerable universes. Text 12. Jagat Mangala Advaita Mangala Gunadhama Mangala Charitra Sada Mangala Yandra Nama. Translation to 12 and a purport by Srila Prabhupada here. Translation: being a reservoir of all auspicious attributes, Sri Advaita Acharya is all auspicious for the world. His characteristics, activities, and name are always auspicious. Purport: Sri Advaita Prabhu, who is an incarnation of Mahavishnu, is an Acharya or teacher. All his activities and all the other activities of Vishnu are auspicious. Anyone who can view the all-auspiciousness of the pastimes of Lord Vishnu also becomes auspicious simultaneously. Therefore, since Lord Vishnu is the fountainhead of auspiciousness, anyone who is attracted by the devotional service of Lord Vishnu can render the greatest service to human society. Rejected persons of the material world who refuse to understand pure devotional service as the eternal function of the living entities and as actual liberation of the living being from conditioned life become bereft of all devotional service because of their poor fund of knowledge. In the teachings of Advaita Prabhu, there is no question of fruitive activities or impersonal liberation. Bewildered by the spell of the material energy, however, persons could not understand that Advaita Prabhu is non-different from Vishnu. Persons who could not understand that Advaita Prabhu is non-different from Vishnu wanted to follow him with their impersonal conceptions. The attempt of Advaita Prabhu to punish them is also auspicious. Lord Vishnu and his activities can bestow all good fortune, directly and indirectly. In other words, being favored by Lord Vishnu and being punished by Lord Vishnu are one and the same, because all the activities of Vishnu are absolute. According to some, Mangala was another name of Advaita Prabhu. Mangala. Mangalarati. Auspicious. As a causal incarnation, or Lord Vishnu's incarnation for a particular occasion, he is the supply agent or ingredient in material nature. However, he is never to be considered material. All his activities are spiritual. Anyone who hears about and glorifies him becomes glorified himself. For such activities, free one from all kinds of misfortune. This morning we are being freed from all kinds of misfortune. One should not invest any material contamination or impersonalism in the Vishnu form. Everyone should try to understand the real identity of Lord Vishnu, for by such knowledge one can attain the highest stage of perfection. So there are many descriptions, explanations. Oh, wow, one very long purport that goes on and on. My God, it's still going on. It must be about 5 pages. Yeah. So we all know how Sri Advaita Acharya appeared before the advent of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He actually caused the advent of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by offering tulsi in the Ganges, loudly crying for the descent of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In his village of Shantipur, which is very close to here in Mayapur, where every year the devotees, just before Gaur Purnima, they go on the appearance of Srila Madhavendra Puri, from whom he took shelter, took initiation. So, yes, Advaita, Srila Advaita Acharya, he is one of the 5 members of the Panchatattva, and as we have just heard here, he is Panchatattva means 5 tattvas. 5 tattvas. 3 of those tattvas are in the category of Vishnu tattva, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and Advaita Acharya. Yeah. It is said that Srila Advaita Acharya lived for a very, very long time. I heard something like 130 years. Over anyone who lives 100 years in Kali Yuga is quite rare. So he lived for a very long time, preaching the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So today is his auspicious appearance, and as we just heard a few minutes ago, from Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who composed the Chaitanya Charitamrita simply by hearing about the glories of Srila Advaita Acharya. Everything becomes auspicious. Yeah. Jai Srila Advaita Acharya Prabhu ki, Jai Srimad Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Nitai Gaura Pimanandi. Hare Krishna.